trials of review healthcare. And we're going to be talking everything compliance today. And I really want to share Leslie's journey, just so you know that it is absolutely possible to translate all of your years of experience into a consulting firm. So, hey, Leslie, how are you doing today? I'm so happy that you were able to join me.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak with your group for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just talking to you beforehand and being able to connect with you one on one, I was really impressed with your journey. And as I always have mentioned, I'm really on this campaign to provide awareness. As healthcare leaders, administrators, clinicians, many of us are burned out, and we need to know what options exist out here. So, Leslie, I would love to learn a little bit more about you if you don't mind introducing yourself to my audience of aspiring healthcare consultants.
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Leslie Boles. I like to tell people I've been in the healthcare industry since I was a teenager. I started working in a physician's office when I was 16. I was exposed to compliance, though, when I started working at a hospital. I was one of those individuals who knew they wanted to be in healthcare, but not on the clinical side. So it was always fascinating to see people in administrative roles. So I didn't know what those administrative roles were at the time, but I was always curious to figure out what it was, right? Which it goes a lot in, it works in harmony with why I'm in compliance. So I happened to come across our chief compliance officer at one point at the hospital I was working at and just asked her, like, hey, what do you do? What is it about? And she started explaining it to me, and I was very interested in it. And then I talked to a few other VPs and administrative roles. We had a couple that were involved in some of our community outreach efforts and some that were chief nursing officers. So it allowed me to get a good balance of what's out there from an administrative perspective, being able to be in healthcare as a leader, but not in a clinical role. So from there, the chief compliance officer, came back to me again and asked me a couple of other questions. I was able to help her. And then the door opened that allowed me to work in her department. And my career, that was the sort of like the beginning piece of my career where it just completely took off. Now, I always tell people compliance is investigative. Compliance is making sure that your healthcare entity or your providers or whoever you're dealing with are complying with rules and regulations that are out there. There are tons of them. And when we think about rules and regs, we only think about them in a box, like in one little silo. But there are so many different rules and regulations out there from a healthcare perspective. So being in compliance has always tapped into my nosy by nature sort of, background mentality that I've had. It just worked for me. And one of the things that I constantly did throughout my career is always talk to people who were in positions where I wanted to be at every level. So even working in a hospital for a large portion of my career for 12 years, and then moving into private equity, and now starting into this new journey um, as an owner of a healthcare consulting firm where it's compliance related. I make sure that I'm constantly talking to people who've already done it, right? Or who are doing it, or people like yourself who are guiding others on how to get there. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I appreciate the journey, and I know many of us can relate to it simply because you're already doing the work when you're in those roles. It's really about awareness. And what really comes to mind, and just you sharing that information about your journey, is you connected and had conversations with leaders and you asked key questions. I think so often you are surrounded by resources, but oftentimes we don't know that those resources can lead to opportunity. So I'm happy that you were able to share that. Leslie, share a little bit with me about what were you doing before? Were you already doing some of the work as a consultant and you didn't know it? Or how did you translate all of that into what you do today?
Well, let's go back to the healthcare setting when I was in the hospital setting. In the hospital setting, I was familiar with the consulting environment. However, it seemed out of reach from where I was sitting. Meaning, my initial thought about consulting was you had to have tons of years of experience. You had to be the only one nominated as a top. That's the way I viewed it from where I was sitting, from a hospital setting. You know, when you see the big fours come in, the big groups, you always associate it from my perspective as an out of reach endeavor. But when I moved from the hospital to private equity, right, it sort of level setted it for me, because now I'm coming out of the state of New Jersey where my world is only this big, right? And I'm thinking about it from such a small perspective. And now I'm looking at it from a PE setting where the world is huge. And now you're seeing consultants in various, different various ways that, or settings you can be utilized. So I never thought, I'm going to be honest, I never thought I would go into consulting on my own or have my own firm. I didn't. My partner and I came together when we worked back at the hospital. We talked about it. Maybe one day we'll have our own company. And we actually put the company together, came up with a name. It had been out 2 or 3 years prior to us even launching it this past year. And and I think a big part of it is not because consulting is not a good area for me to be in. A lot had to do with how I looked at myself, right? Because sometimes one of the downfalls or the shortfalls that we have is insecurities, right? You seem to think, well, this person also does it and they have their spin on it, so they know just as much as I do. So why am I doing this? Or this other person has, this other skill set and they have all these credentials behind their name. Why would I go out there and try to do it on my own? So a lot of it was me. And I had to get beyond me in order to make that decision to move forward. So I stopped listening to all of the no's in my head, because sometimes when you are listening to the no's, you're also looking for the no's externally, right? And I also stopped listening to people who were off putting me in the same box that I was sitting in way back in when I was in the hospital setting, thinking that consulting was so far out of reach. It's not. There are so many numerous opportunities out here from a consulting standpoint for so many different types of credentials and people with different skill sets. It's not even funny. I mean, you and I have talked about the way in which healthcare is moving right now. So you have ESG, right, which is environmental, social, and governance. That's a whole new world for healthcare that you can step into. You have all the conversation around health equity and healthcare disparities and where that's going and some of the things that are happening with that. And then outside of what we know to be healthcare, you also have the technological advancements of healthcare. I mean, literally, there are talks right now as we speak about how to bring healthcare into the metaverse. And right now, we can't see this, we don't know it, but it is a very real thing. There's actually a clinician who's down in Houston who's opened up her first meta clinic, right? And when I was reading about, yeah, it was.
It's a very, the conversations are happening.
Yes. So when I was reading about that, it just made me think that, when it comes to consulting, and especially for myself, I'm a thought leader. I like to be innovative. And that's what consulting means for me, right? How can I help people keep up with the way in which healthcare is moving is my purpose and my destiny, in addition to my skill set that I have. When you look at it from that aspect, when you look at it from an innovative perspective, the possibilities are endless.
That's so true. I agree with you. I feel like the pandemic, we're in the recovery phase, right? So post-pandemic, I feel there were opportunities before and during, but even now, the opportunities are just so rich and abundant. You are the expert in a specialty. Essentially, Leslie, and you and I both know this, now is the time. So, Leslie, I know that you essentially specialize in compliance. But compliance, I feel, there's so many different ways in which we can serve our clients as compliance consultants. Tell me specifically, is there a particular lane in compliance that you focus on? I know a little bit about your company. You focus on like coding and billing, and there's some other things along with that as well. But how essentially do you serve your clients, and what pains do you solve for them?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. because when I first opened up, or the way I thought about opening up the firm, I looked at it from the perspective of, I want the services that I offer to be based on the people that I hire, right? I didn't want to put a bunch of different services out there and then try to fit people into those service categories, because I feel I've seen that done, and to me, it's not organic. So what I did was I thought about the people first, like who do I know over the course of, because again, relationships are everything. So over the course of my career, I've met tons of people who are just great consultants, whether they knew it or not, directly or indirectly, whether they were, in a consulting role or not. And we based our services, my partner and I based our services around that. So, in addition to what we consider to be your general compliance areas, because most people, when they think about compliance, lots of times they think about only privacy, or they think about something like violating some major law, like the Stark law, or and kind of stay in that lane. But there's so many different elements to compliance, and where I have a niche is what you mentioned, is billing and coding compliance, right? Reimbursement. And we help our providers from the standpoint, okay, it's one thing to be able to collect your reimbursement, right, and do it compliantly, but then how do you also retain your reimbursement? How do you keep it in your pocket so that when it comes time for audit or other different types of external payer scrutiny, you know how to build a defense around it? So that's another huge area that we focus on. And then within it, I think a lot of times, and this is what I've seen over the course of my career in compliance, we tend to, sometimes as compliance professionals, not everybody, we tend to say the rules and regulations, but in a way where an operational person or someone in senior leadership doesn't know how to incorporate them into practice, right? So a big part of my career, many of the things that I've heard is, hey, you're really good at taking this very complicated rule or regulation and making it digestible. So we have an entire arm dedicated to education and teaching you not only how to comply, but then also how to understand these rules that come out so that you can then sustain on your own without us, per se, right? We're kind of doing the opposite. What we don't want to do is come in and say, hey, we're going to come in and help you, and then we're going to come in and help you forever. That's no benefit, right? And then it almost makes us seem like we are just trying to latch on just to get as much money as possible. What we want to do is teach you how to do it right, and then teach you how to sustain it, so that then we can help you with the next reg or the next rule or the next area that there's confusion around. So that's a big part of our model. So that works because we put so much emphasis on the individuals that we're identifying as subject matter experts. So basically, everyone that is in our, and I like to call our firm our network, right? Who's in our network, because we brought them in, then they'll bring in more people, and then it just continues to grow, which is a big part of how you grow your business as well.
Yeah. So it sounds, Leslie, like you have identified a problem to solve in your own experiences in healthcare, but now you've essentially recruited others who you've identified along your journey to kind of help you
Right.
within those, I guess, client fulfillment, right? Am I right?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep,
Mhm.
absolutely. So over time, I've taught at Rutgers University for the latter part of my career. So getting to do that exposed me to students who were interested in compliance and coding and auditing. And, I think it's a godsend, because what it does, it sets up a nice pipeline for my business, but then also being able to mentor them for other opportunities as well. So yeah, and then I am a person, just like how we connected, right? I am a person who takes the opportunity to network with anyone, because you just never know at what point in your career you're going to need a specific skill set. You're going to need to work with someone, and I almost live in a world, which probably sounds nuts, but I live in a world where I'm not thinking about competition at all when it comes to my business. And the reason being is because healthcare is here to stay. Healthcare is not going anywhere. There is enough opportunity for everyone out here. And the thing about it is, I think more of us need to start looking at competition differently. Like we look at competitive from the, the old way where we're just like, all right, we're going to hold on to this. We got this proprietary information. We're not going to share this. This is not going to happen. But healthcare is innovative. And in innovation, it requires collaboration. So I talk to everybody, everybody, even if we have competing services or there's overlap in what I provide versus what you provide, because at the end of the day, one of us is going to encounter an area that we need a hand in at some point, and it's mutually beneficial for the both of you to work together. So when it comes to our competition, we don't have any, right? My only competition is keeping up with the innovations of the healthcare industry because they're happening so quickly. So I'm focused on, more about the people that I'm hiring, making sure that the contracts and the type of services that we offer are services that still require our expertise in human intervention. And I think that's important living in a society where technology is advancing so fast. This is something I teach my students and folks that I mentor all the time. You should be looking at your career path, and us as consultants, we should be looking at our consultancies or our businesses as just as innovatively as they do with technology, right? Because very soon they're going to be robotic processes and artificial intelligence and all types of automated functions that replace human interventions. So this is why, for me, my competition are those advancements. It's not the next person. In fact, I open up the door so that we can create conversations on how are we going to collectively collaborate on this and where can we still be, of value. So
yeah, absolutely. I love how you essentially connect and build relationship because you're right. At the end of the day, when you start to expand and scale, you're one person. So you have to know who is around you and strategically align yourself with people who can assist you with these larger contracts and also build the relationships that can equate to contracts. So I'm curious to learn a little bit more about is there a strategy behind the relationships you build to acquire? Tell me a little bit about, a lot of the questions that we get from newer consultants is everyone always wants to know, okay, how do I acquire a contract? I have all this experience. I have all of this information in which I've been helping organizations, but now I'm ready to kind of go out on my own. So I would love to learn a little bit more about how do you leverage your relationships and convert those into actual paid consulting contracts?
Yeah, so I think what I do goes back to what I said earlier, which is networking is so key. It's such a big part of this. It's not even funny. I think, your traditional marketing, you're sending out emails, your website, your LinkedIn, all of this stuff is important. But the biggest part of your business is how you connect with others. So when I was in New Jersey, I learned more about the power of connections and networking when I was with this association called New Jersey Healthcare Financial Management Association. And it was this group within it, NJHFMA, where they had a group of very experienced compliance professionals, and they networked with each other and they talked to each other and they helped each other. And when one needed a new job, they relied on each other. They gave each other feedback and tips. And although that function is not directly in line with what we're talking about from a consulting standpoint, it taught me the power of connection and staying connected. And it also taught me the power of in-person relationships, right? So for me, despite all of the great virtual tools that we have, especially now post-pandemic, right? It is still important to go to conferences. It is still important to get in professional organizations. Go to your local meetings. It is very important for you to go to subject matter local skill groups and organizations. Like I'm very connected in with all of the professional organizations associated with compliance, billing and coding, general healthcare compliance, because within those networks, what happens are you build trust with your clients, whether you know it or not. So you can be talking to them about something totally different, And yet that's translating to a trusting relationship. So when there's a need, right, that you can service, they feel comfortable to say, you know what? She knows what she's talking about. She's a subject matter expert. I've dealt with her in this capacity over here. And I know she can apply those same skill sets to this contract. So for me, that has been my go-to, right? Even when I didn't know I was going to be in consulting, I didn't realize all those time I spent volunteering, being in those rooms actually spoke or actually produced these trusting, long-lasting quality relationships. So I see sometimes when I go to, conferences, I actually see consultants with their badge on, they're kind of sitting in the corner. That's just not a good idea, right? Talk to whoever you can. And it doesn't have to be for the purpose of obtaining a contract, right? Sometimes just having a genuinely authentic conversation that's real and can just provoke, a different thought process or make you think about something different. Don't, if you aim to always, I want a contract to network or to meet someone, then it's not going to be authentic. It's not going to be organic. So I say I've always built relationships authentically, right? Organically. And from there, the outcome is it's a benefit to your business, but ultimately it's a benefit for you personally, right? Because you're creating a network without intentionally setting out to do it for your business. So
Yeah.
that's
You
my
know, I posted today, even on LinkedIn, about I
Mhm.
appreciate those who reach out to me and connect with me, who are doing so from a place of I want to build a relationship that even extends beyond LinkedIn. And at the end of the day, I think we've all been pitched to in our inbox. And at the other end of that contract that you are attempting to acquire, because we're in business, at the end of the day, you have bills to pay. So acquisition should be the name of the game. However, when you have a relationship with
Right.
someone, just remember that there's an emotional connection that drives buying decisions. So when you are strategically connecting, and there's an authentic way to do it, absolutely,
Right.
you need to make sure that there is something else of value that you can share. So I share that with my audience all the time too. Like I appreciate anyone who reaches out just to say, "Hey, Elle, it's been a long time. How are you doing?"
Right.
Opposed to, "Hey, Elle, here's 2 paragraphs of why you need to buy into my solutions." And I feel like, with leaders, with organizational leaders, it's no different. So
Right.
I've embraced the motto also, Leslie, is I sell how I like to be sold to.
Right. Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
absolutely. So tell me, if for a newer consultant who is interested in getting started and they meet a leader at a conference and they're like, okay, I met a leader, I networked. Okay, well, now what? So what is the next step beyond networking and meeting someone?
Yeah, I and the reason why I'm thinking about this because I think back to my own thought process.
Mm.
Um, I think what lacks today in individuals is authenticity. I say it a lot, right? So every step in your next step should be authentic with that individual because no matter what you're saying, if authenticity is the driver behind it, authentic, genuine purpose, then it'll come out in whatever you say. So when I meet someone new for the first time, and I potentially want to work with him. Let's be honest, we potentially want to work with him. Maybe it's because of the size of their entity or, they have a need, right? I like to ask them about what their need is, get to know them, understand what their facility is versus me saying, here's all the things that I can do for you, right? Because I'm just so excited to meet you and be within the room. Tell me more about yourself. Tell me more about your entity. Tell me more about your team, right? And in listening to them sometimes and asking those questions first, you may come to the realization like, well, maybe they don't need me, right? Before you jump into your whole spiel about what you offer, it's almost like the super salesy approach is the approach I put on the back burner. It
I
is. I wait.
agree.
I want to know who you are. What is it that your needs are? Because if I run down a complete entire list of all of my services that my firm can offer, right? One, I've overwhelmed. my target at that point. And two, I've missed the opportunity to genuinely listen to them, to ask questions, to identify, okay, do they really actually need the service? So, what I would say is to be thoughtful about your approach, right? When you meet someone new, ask more questions before you provide more statements. Do the opposite of what they tell you to do from a sales perspective. I also think it's really important to go into it not knowing, right? Be okay. Because if every single, like you said, if every single interaction is based on, I want to get a contract, I want to get a contract, the exact opposite is going to happen. You're not going to get the contract because you're putting more emphasis into that versus creating or identifying a safe space for them to talk about what their needs are or who they are. So, I like to be more strategic. I like to be more thoughtful. I like to be more innovative in how I approach it. And I also want to sustain in this model, right? So I
Absolutely.
also want to be the one who's known to be like, Leslie's a great listener. She's going to listen to what you have to say first. She's going to hear you out. She's going to provide guidance. And then her services actually come last when you're talking to her. That's how I like to do things, and it's worked for me. And it meets, I got into this because first and foremost, I wanted to show my son. I have a 5-year-old son. His name is Tristan, right? I want to show him in a world sometimes where people tell you that you shouldn't and you can't have a legacy or generational wealth, that you can. That's first and foremost, right? So, in order for me to show him that, I have to be strategic. I have to be paced. I have to be thoughtful. I have to be brilliant at this. If I want what I intended on doing to outlive me, so that when he gets to be my age, he can be like, "Job well done, mom. I see what you did." I have to really think about that thoughtfully. The second piece is I'm doing this for all the people in my life who've ever told me I would never amount to nothing, right? We do not admit that those people sometimes are your greatest motivators. Those people are the ones who propel you into areas as mad as they may make you that you would never think that you could touch, goals you could ever touch. And the third piece for me is healthcare consulting is not a big area where you see a lot of successfully, right? 8 or 9 figure Black women running an organization. You don't. But for me, you will see it, right? I want to show myself, right? And also the young Black girls that come after us of color that this is possible. That because you don't see a lot of us doesn't mean you can't be it for the next person. So those are my 3 purposes. And I identify that myself and my partner identify those things very early on before we even started. And when we start to deviate from what we intended, we go back to them, right? Our legacy, our kids, our own insecurities, and leaving blazing a trail for others is so so important. So I encourage for all of you that are in consulting, right? If the first thing that comes to mind when you think about being an owner or having your own consulting business is money, then you need to reevaluate it. You need to reevaluate it. Look at it again, because money will be an outcome of your purpose, so you don't even have to name it. You don't even have to say it. But what is your real purpose? What is the driver behind why you're creating a consulting firm? Because this life, and just be completely honest, is a roller coaster, right? One minute you're up, the next minute you're down, and you have to be able to always defer back to your why. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? So every time my son comes running into my office at night after 5 and he's looking at me and he's proud of me and he's smiling, there's my why. That's the reason why I'm doing it. And all that comes with it will be accomplished. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of internal work that has to be done for us to do this.
right.
There's a lot of risks that we have to take in order to do this. There are a lot of investments in yourself that you have to do in
Yes.
order to do this. And so you are one of the reasons why I desire to have the network podcast for healthcare consultants, because it's about exposure. We have been, many of us have always been experts in resources and subject matter experts on the job, but you can translate that into a very profitable business. And just kind of leaning back into some of the things you mentioned before, like there's complete abundance in this industry, but it's about like, do you believe it's possible? But do you identify yourself as the expert? So I'm so happy that you were able to come and share your business model and some of your achievements and some of the things that you're continuing to work on. I feel like there will be no, healthcare constantly evolves. There's opportunity. I don't think that'll ever slow down, ever, ever, ever.
No.
But Leslie, I'm curious to know. We're gonna open it up to questions. So for those of you here on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Facebook world, we'll take 2 to 3 questions that you can ask Leslie. So think about those questions. But in the meantime, Leslie, if anyone wants to stay connected with you, because it is about a network. That's why I call it the network. I cannot take over healthcare by myself, nor can Leslie, but we can do it and collaborate together. So if you would love to connect with Leslie, how can we get a hold of you, Leslie?
Sure. So there's different ways you can contact me, of course, through LinkedIn at Leslie Boles, my LinkedIn page. We also have a website, www.reviewhealthcare.com. Where you can leave your contact information. We'll reach out to you. And on that website, there's also my email address where you can contact me there as well. So lbowles@reviewhealthcare.com. So yes, feel free to reach out to me anytime.
I'm surprised there's no questions. So we'll stay on for just a little bit longer.
Sure.
Leslie, I appreciate you. And if there were any resources, maybe 2 or 3 tips or 2 to 3 resources that you would share, or I won't say 2 to 3 resources, maybe a resource or 2 to 3 tips that you would share with someone who's on the fence. They identify that they're the expert, but they're a little bit scared to move forward. What would you share with that aspiring healthcare consultant that would help them make that leap?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that I would do. I think that one of the first things that we did when we were thinking about moving this way was looking at our region in our area from a demographic standpoint. I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't look at their surrounding area to figure out if what they're looking to do will be lucrative in that area. So I would look to see what type of service you're looking to offer, what type of monopolies exist in that area, meaning are there competitors who offer things that you don't? Like, for instance, there are some huge consulting firms out there, and one of the reasons that makes them so powerful is because they have technology, right? Proprietary software that helps them take what you do in 6 hours, it takes them an hour, right? So sometimes we launch our business and we don't think about that fact. So I would research really to see, okay, what is the average consultancy offering right now for the problem I'm saying I can solve? Okay, where's the lack in from that comparative sort of thing? And then looking at the demographic around you, really doing that research around you to see what the needs are. Who are your clients? What are their needs? For me personally, moving from New Jersey to Dallas was one of the best things that could have happened for myself personally and professionally, right? Because not that New Jersey didn't have opportunity, there is opportunity there, but leaving the state allowed me to see the country more clearly, right? Because unfortunately, I lived in an environment thought process that was in a box. So I only thought about healthcare consulting like this when it's actually like this, right? So I'm not telling you to be as drastic as I am and leave your where you live, right? But there may be better opportunity for what you're looking to do in a different state, in a different location. And sometimes we tend to open up our dreams. We want to perform our dreams on the wrong stage. That's what I mean to say. So make sure you're on the right stage.
I like that.
You're in the right environment. Make sure that when you step into what you want to do, not saying that there will not be challenges, there will most certainly be challenges, and they come in various formats that you never think. But it is good to make sure that you do the research to set yourself up securely. So sometimes when something isn't working, don't be so quick to say, oh, I gave it a shot, it's not working. We always evaluate what we do wrong. Like even, just from a contracting standpoint, it we are so quick sometimes to put big numbers in contracts, right? Because we're going to be like, this is our price, this is our price. But is there a way to dissect your price from like an hourly or weekly standpoint that doesn't overwhelm your client? Can you reevaluate your language in your contract? Maybe you need to reevaluate the way you are presenting the contract. Maybe it needs to be in a PowerPoint format versus a Word document with all and a PDF and all of this stuff in it. Can you bullet it for it? Do you need to work on your presentation skills? So I'm all about never just saying, never settling on any level. I don't care what it is, right? I am reevaluating what I did, why I did it, and how I can improve it at every step of the way. And that's how our team works. So yeah.
It sounds, I always tell even my students, Leslie, like you have to track what you're doing so you can measure your KPIs. Yes. But just hearing you say that, listen, you have internal KPIs that you need to check into and measure just as much as you do your business KPIs.
Right.
So, I understand a lot of people do give up way too fast. And
yes.
Just to kind of share with you, Leslie, like my longest contract, that was actually my most lucrative, it was a year of following up. Most people would have stopped after maybe 2 emails, but like we're just not the same. The grit has to be there, tuning into your why. But then I was also able to I can reflect on that experience now, Leslie, and think, okay, what did I do wrong and what took that so fast?
Right.
Now I've embraced collapsing time, so I know what conversations and how to build relationships that it doesn't take a year anymore. Like
no, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It's a learning process, right? Like we don't go into this being experts when it comes to business. Sometimes it takes trial and error. So I appreciate you sincerely sharing your journey, and I'm excited about all the things that are for coming to your business. Thank you for sharing the journey. And for those of you who want to connect with Leslie, she is on LinkedIn. And also, before we go again, Leslie, do you mind sharing your website?
Yeah, sure. Did you want me to also enter it into the chat maybe?
Yeah, that would be great.
Let me do that. So it's www.reviewhealthcare.com.
And someone is grateful, and we appreciate the gratitude. It looks like you have someone who says, thank you, Leslie, for the conversation. I'm glad you decided to share this information. So
no, thank you.
We appreciate you, and definitely look forward to having you back on, because we got to talk about this private equity. That's a whole other topic of conversation.
Yes, it is. It is a whole other topic for sure. Definitely.
Well, we appreciate you, and everyone, be sure to connect with Leslie on LinkedIn, and you can also check out her website. Everyone, have an amazing day. We'll see you next week on the Network Podcast for Healthcare Consultants.
Thank you.